Have you ever heard a story so chilling it makes the hair on your arm stand up? A tale whispered in hushed tones around campfires or during late-night sleepovers? Well, lean in closer, because tonight, I have a new one for you. This isn't just any old ghost story. This is an original American horror tale, perfect for a dark and stormy night. It's a fast-paced, eerie, and cinematic journey into the heart of a place that time forgot, but something else remembered. We're going to talk about a dare that should have been left alone, a school shrouded in mystery, and a bell that signals something far more sinister than the end of class. Welcome to the story of the last bell of Clearwater High. Clearwater High School. The name itself sounds so peaceful, doesn't it? But its history is anything but. The school was officially shut down back in 1989, abandoned after a devastating fire tore through its halls, gutting nearly half of the building. The official investigation went cold. Nobody ever figured out what or who started the blaze. It became just another forgotten relic, a scar on the town's landscape. But the locals, they know the truth. They say that on cold, quiet nights, if you get close enough, you can still smell the faint, acrid scent of smoke hanging in the air. And sometimes, long after midnight, you can hear its last bell tolling in the darkness. This brings us to last fall. Like so many before them, a group of 4 friends found the allure of the abandoned school irresistible. There was Tyler, the confident leader; Megan, the cautious one; Chris, the skeptic, one who masked his fear with jokes; and Lily, the impulsive daredevil. They decided to sneak in for a night. The rules were simple, a classic test of courage. Just one night inside, Tyler challenged him, a grin playing on his lips. No phones, no flashlights after we're in. All you have to do, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, is make it to the principal's office and ring the old bell on his desk. A easy dare, but one that would unravel their world as they know it. They found their way in through the rusted-out back doors of the gymnasium. The moment they stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. The air was thick, heavy with a suffocating smell of damp mold and old ash that clung to the back of their throats. It was a tomb. As they moved deeper, their footsteps echoed unnervingly in the silence. The main hallway was a chaotic scene, frozen in time, with lockers hanging open like gaping, silent mouths. Megan, already on edge, froze. She swore she heard footsteps echoing from further down the hall, a soft, shuffling sound. "Did you guys hear that?" she whispered, her eyes wide open. Chris just laughed it off, trying to break the tension. "Relax, Meg. It's probably just rats. Big ones," he said, nudging her playfully, but even his voice sounded a little strained. They continued on, their bravado slowly chipping away with every shadow that danced in the corners of their vision. They passed by the old science wing, a place notorious for strange occurrences even when the school was open. Suddenly, the emergency lights overhead, powered by some long-forgotten backup generator, flickered erratically. For a split second, the hallway was bathed in a ghostly red glow, and in that brief flash of light, they all saw it. Standing at the far end of the hall, motionless, was a figure. A tall man, dressed in a charred, tattered suit, just watching them. His form was indistinct, like a heat haze rising from asphalt, but he was undeniably there. Then, just as quickly, the lights died, and they were plunged back into darkness. A collective gasp escaped them. They all started to run, not out of genuine terror, not yet, but with a nervous, adrenaline-fueled energy, laughing to each other, pretending it was a trick of the light, their imaginations running wild in the creepy old building. "My eyes are playing tricks on me," Chris stammered, his earlier confidence gone. But the building wasn't done with him. Every time the emergency lights blinked back on once, twice, 3 times, he was closer. The figure in the charred suit was no longer at the end of the hall. First, he was by the trophy case, then by the water fountain. He wasn't walking. He was just appearing, closer and closer with every pulse of light. By the time they finally stumbled, breathless and panicked, to the administrative corridor, their laughter had died completely. They reached the principal's office, and a new wave of ice-cold dread washed over them. The heavy oak door, which should have been locked for decades, was already creaking open, inviting them in. Inside, the office was a mess of burnt files and overturned furniture, coated in a thick layer of dust and soot. But there, in the center of the chaos, sitting on the desk as if placed on a pedestal, was the object of their dare. The old brass handbell. It was blackened and tarnished by the fire, yet it seemed to command the entire room. The four of them stood frozen in the doorway, the dare feeling very real now. Lily, ever the bold one, took a hesitant step forward, her hand outstretched toward the bell. A sense of finality hung in the air. "Dawn," Tyler whispered, his voice barely audible, a desperate plea. But his warning came too late, driven by the dare, or perhaps by something else entirely. Lily's fingers closed around the handle. She began to ring it. The sound was not the gentle chime they expected. It was a deafening, discordant clang that vibrated through the very bones of the school. It seemed to shake the dust from the ceiling and rattle the broken panes of glass in the windows. As the ringing faded, an unnatural silence fell, colder and more profound than before. The air turned ice cold, their breath fogging in front of them. And then a new sound began, a static crackle from the old intercom speaker on the wall. It sputtered to life, and a voice, distorted and hollow, echoed not just in the office, but throughout the entire school. It seemed to be a calm, authoritative voice, the kind a principal would use. "Students, return to your seats." The effect was instantaneous. From down the halls, a cacophony erupted. Locker doors slammed shut, one by one, a rhythmic, metallic boom that marched down the corridor toward them. Heavy wooden desks scraped and screeched across classroom floors, moving on their own. The school was waking up, and from the doorway of every classroom they had just passed, figures began to step out into the hallway. Teachers and students, their forms shimmering and indistinct. Their clothes were burned, their bodies broken and twisted from the fire, their faces pale and hollow-eyed, and they all turned their heads in unison, their empty gazes fixing on the four terrified teenagers in the principal's office. There was no more hesitation, no more bravado, just pure, primal fear. The four of them turned and bolted, sprinting for the main entrance they had seen on their way in. They slammed into the heavy double doors, but they wouldn't budge. They were sealed shut, as if welded to the frame. They were trapped. Panic set in as the shuffling sound of dozens of footsteps grew closer. The last thing Megan remembered was the suffocating smell of smoke, the sound of that terrible bell ringing again, louder and more insistent this time, and the sound of Tyler screaming a name maybe hers, maybe Lily's before everything went dark. The next morning, the police were called by a concerned parent. They conducted a search of the old high school, but they found it completely empty. Well, almost empty. The four teenagers' flashlights were found lying on the floor in the main hall, their beams still weakly cutting through the gloom. There was no other sign of Tyler, Megan, Chris, or Lily. They had simply vanished. But the investigators noted one bizarre, inexplicable detail. In the principal's office, the old brass bell was no longer blackened and tarnished. It was sitting on the desk, polished to a brilliant, spotless shine. And they say that ever since that night, the legend of Clearwater High has grown. Every year, on the exact anniversary of the fire, the locals who live nearby swear they can hear it. Right at the stroke of midnight, a single, clear bell rings out from the abandoned school, its sound carrying on the cold night-era final bell, calling its long-lost students back to class. So the next time you see an abandoned building, the next time you hear a dare whispered among friends, remember the story of Clearwater High. Remember that some doors are best left unopened, and some bells are best left unrung. Because once you hear it ring, class might just be back in session. Permanently. Thank you so much for joining me for this dive into the dark. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Whispers in the Dark for more original horror stories. And let me know in the comments what urban legend from your hometown still gives you the creeps. Stay safe, and until next time, try not to listen for things that go bump in the night.